Welcome to Grappling with the Gray, a forum for promoting an ethical mindset and ethical decision-making. Help us more clearly see both sides of complex issues and better navigate the moral challenges of everyday life. I'm Rabbi Yosin Goldson, and I'd like to welcome my guests today, all from across the pond. With me from Portugal is Carolyn Lebanowski, who is a strategic leadership partner with the Institute for Leadership and Lifelong Learning International, advising spiritual nonprofit institutions. Toni McLelland from London, if I'm not mistaken, is founder and director of First Life Group. She is a critical friend and business mentor in social justice, mobility, and impact, leading sustainable change through DEIB and compassion. And Colin Smith, is it from outside of London? Is that right?
Just on the outside of London.
Also known as the listener. He works with leaders and professionals to improve the listening, thinking, and relationship skills of individuals and teams. Thank you all for being with me today. And
Thank you for having me.
A recent post on Reddit recounts how an employee found themselves reprimanded by their manager for taking 45 minutes for break one day instead of 30 minutes. The employee recalled taking 31 minutes that day because someone stopped them on their way back with a concern that took time to resolve. It seems that the company punch clock rounded to the nearest 15-minute interval, thereby inaccurately recording the break time. But the manager refused to accept that explanation. From that day forward, the employee would go on break exactly 7 minutes after the cutoff time and return within 7 minutes of the cutoff on the other end. For instance, punching out at 10:22 would get rounded back to 10:15, and punching out at 10:52 would get rounded back to 10:30. In this way, a 44-minute break would be recorded as exactly 30 minutes. When a supervisor told the employee that it seemed they were gone longer than usual, the employee said, "Check the record." Novelist Robert A. Heinlein coined the term white mutiny, which means following the letter of the law so literally that you subvert the spirit of the law, Amelia Bedelia style. The contemporary term is malicious compliance. When bosses or managers demand strict compliance to the point where they end up punishing employees because of inequities in their company system, are employees justified in exploiting loopholes in the system to their own advantage? The floor is open.
Well, I'll jump in and I'll just say, I'm kind of with you, Toni. It was hard to read. You just wanted to stop and go, that can't be possible. How is that happening? But really kind of what occurred to me is about systems. And all organizations have systems. You have to have it to run a company. But when systems break and systems don't work, 9 times out of 10, we tend to blame the people and not the system. And I think that's really what happened here. So what occurred to me was this is really a no-win situation. I think for either party. I think the manager, by refusing to accept that the time clock was the way that it was wrong. There was no leadership, no dialogue, no engagement. And then I think the employee is wrong in taking advantage of a system, because fraud, time theft, whatever you want to call it, really is a real issue, and for a lot of companies. So I think what I came away initially is that there's a no-win situation, and I think 2 wrongs don't make a right.
Does it have to be a no-win situation? I mean, what if the, my ethics talks, I say that the T in ethics is trust. And if the boss or the manager says to the employees, listen, we have a glitch in the system. There are going to be times when it's not accurately reflecting your break time. So I'm going to trust you to take 30 minutes of break. And I'm not going to pay attention to the clock. And we're all here to be on the same team and to take care of our responsibilities.
Absolutely. And that's what I meant by there was no dialogue in that. There was no discussion. There was no engagement. There was no inquiry into why or if he knew the system was broken. So that's exactly right. And the employee could have said something else differently. Well, can we talk about this? Can we talk about the system? What do I do next time if it's 1 minute? What would you like me to do? Where are the processes? So all fixable, but in that current one, I think they were both did not do the right thing, and I just don't think two rights make a wrong, two wrongs make a right.
Colin, Toni?
Well, I'm just going to say that it comes down to trust and humanity, really, doesn't it? I think I'm trying to kind of see a different way of thinking. But for me, it's really for the manager to see that there's an over-reliance upon this system. That, there was a piece that said that it was law. I mean, there's a difference between local guidance rules and legal, because law is legal, isn't it? And how much time are we going to spend on a meeting, having a disciplinary, exchanging those words, time figuring out, the cryptic clues and all of these quizzes and everything. It's almost like, you have these quizzes and you have these tests before you're appointed, not, every day at lunchtime or break time. Surely you want to apply your time in a more constructive way. So for me, it just kind of feels like a really abnormal way of kind of working. And I would just conclude by saying that, there's an over-reliance, there's AI, artificial intelligence, EI, emotional intelligence, and HI, human intelligence. There's a place for all of them, but we need to work out when and where and the application. So that's kind of where I'm sitting. Over-reliance.
I mean, I think it's difficult probably for all of us to understand the thinking process of the manager in this story. Clearly, it's observable that there is a problem with the system. Clearly, it's observable that this is going to produce inequities in the record. And the apparent unwillingness to acknowledge that is what I really find fascinating. If you're familiar with Ron Carucci, he writes on ethics and culture a lot, as I do, and he has from the Harvard Business Review a study that when employees, or really any members of communities, when they perceive injustice, when they perceive a lack of ethics, and that inclines them to be less ethical. If I'm living or working in a culture that is not upright, why am I going to be the chump who toes the line and who does things right when I'm actually going to be penalized for it? I might as well take advantage of the system too. And it doesn't seem like a tremendous leap of logic to recognize that this over-reliance on systems is ultimately going to harm the company. Colin?
And I think that just real quick, when the quote unquote the manager refused to accept that explanation, I think that right there is what you're talking to, Jonathan, is that I can't imagine in any scenario where a manager or somebody refused to accept something without more conversation, dialogue. So excuse me, Colin, I jumped right in.
Bear me a second, sorry. Thank you. Yeah, the couple of things that come to mind for me. One obviously is the trust issue that was raised earlier. We also talk about what we don't know. So for me, that lovely expression of "it depends," I always use it. Is we don't know enough about the organization. We don't know enough about the situation. We don't know enough about the manager's position in his role, also the type of organization, and also whether this is not the first time that this has happened. Sometimes when we put systems in or processes in, and I'm thinking about a commission plan that often happens. So you expect to have it before the beginning of the sales year. Usually it's about 2 months late. And when that happens, the salespeople, first thing they do is look at it, how can I make the most money? And so they go, right, if I sell lots of these, I'll get lots more money. Fine. But it turns out that's not what the company wants. They'd like it a bit more balanced. But they set the system up not to do that. And I think there's something here about the system. So I agree with you, Carolyn, that the systems are letting the environment down. What also came to mind when I was thinking about this is the Netflix organization. And one of the things they do is they trust their people. And I think when you trust, you've got to go back to the recruitment process. Are we recruiting the right people? Those with good ethics, good morals, good values, all of those things that align. And often we don't do that well enough. It's like we'll sort that out afterwards. But what they say with holidays in Netflix is you can take as much holiday as you like and when you like, because we trust you. We don't know when you're working. You could be working every evening and you're taking time off during the day. That's fine. So long as you do your job, and if you don't do your job, then there's a conversation. And the other is if it doesn't impact the team that you're in. So it does require people to be more thoughtful. And then the final piece I'd add into this at this moment is about the whole parent, adult, child environment. If we treat people like children, i.e. in this manager's case, he was behaving parental, then the individual is often more likely to act like a child or childlike. What we really want is that adult conversation, where, as you said, Carolyn, and you, Toni, we want to have a conversation about this. And let's understand, because we trust you. We trust that you're intelligent. We trust that you're morally sound because we've done the recruitment. And it turns out actually the system is letting us down, not just you or me, us. That's my first thoughts.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
can I just come in on the back of Colin?
Please.
I totally agree with what Colin's saying when you're saying about the parent and child scenario, but I can add another one onto that as well. And that is about, because when I work with leaders, ego can sometimes come into play. And ego, it could be lack of knowledge of dealing with a situation like this. They don't know how to. So it's we're going to go with that because that is the law, that's the rules. So I don't know, I haven't got enough skill or experience to be flexible in my approach. So sometimes it takes them into that particular space. So ego and lack of knowledge or lack of experience can also take us into that little corner there. So I just wanted to add that from my perspective and my experience. Thank you.
Yeah, Colin, I just wanted to really talk about what you talked about, the hiring process, and what vetting are we doing on the front end? Because one thing I was really surprised and I won't use the word shocked, I was surprised at the number of legal actions that Walmart, Amazon, and Home Depot have taken on their employees for time theft, for not clocking in, not clocking out, falsifying records, if it's timesheets, and that's stealing. That's stealing from a company.
Yeah.
So I just didn't, because I am more used to dealing with the higher level leadership groups where yes, there is trust. You do work from home. You have these arrangements and these accountabilities and the work performance and all those things that you can manage and rate. But clocking in and clocking out is truly a system and can be flawed and can be severely taken advantage of.
Yeah, and that's really interesting that you say that, Carolyn, because it really challenges the whole idea of trust, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I was working with a business owner who ultimately I did not consult, but the way he spoke about his employees indicated to me that he was as much of the problem. He looked at them as basically children, as you say, Colin, and recalcitrant children who needed to be, unspoiled, so they would start doing their jobs properly. And there may be times when the employees are just not committed. And sometimes I suppose that comes from the culture that's created, and sometimes it comes from the individual. I know that in Good to Great, Jim Collins' classic, he says it's much more important to hire for attitude and character than for skills, because you can teach skills,
Yeah.
but you can't teach character.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what we're talking about when in the hiring practice, as you're vetting your employees or, whatever you're doing through that process, do they have the skill set, but are they going to not clock out correctly? I mean, that probably doesn't come into your mind. Or will they falsify a record, which is just unfortunately very easy to do. Because if you're doing it manually, it's easy just to lie. And if you're clocking in, you can just have your best friend clock in for you or clock out, and you don't even have to be there. So those are flawed systems unless we get into the biorhythms or the more less antiquated ways of clocking in and clocking out, which I think this is what that scenario is.
I actually think as well, because as you were speaking, Carolyn, I was just thinking about this and what you said, Jonas, and about the skill aspect in the recruitment. And one of the things I spend a lot of time talking about is the difference between a skill and being good at a skill, being a really good people leader, and having business acumen, and the fact that the three of them are very different. And I think what we're missing here is the skill to lead people. Just this morning, I was speaking to somebody that is really great at their role, but actually is not so great at leading others, and I think that that's the element that can sometimes be missed in an interview as well. So I just wanted to highlight that, just picking up on something Carolyn said as well around the processes and the numbers that are going to disciplinaries and things like that. This is where they don't have the experience to manage that people skill. And so therefore it gets moved to HR and some formal procedure, when really that relationship and that conversation, as Colin referred to, is what's actually needed. And the last point that I want to make, if I can, is about really let's focus in on what are the outputs and what is the outcome. Again, what Colin mentioned earlier on, what are we really focusing our time on? It's really about what they're producing, and that's what we should be looking at the end of the day, not micromanaging, because we know that there are always going to be some managers that micromanage. There's always going to be some staff that take advantage or exploit a situation. So where do we find the balance? Build a relationship. Thank you.
Now let me read a note here from Darren. Tell me what you think about this. The recent British Post Office scandal, with which I am not familiar, is a noteworthy case study. A significant issue that companies often encounter is employees' reluctance to approach their managers, fearing it might jeopardize their chances of promotion. Organizations and leaders should be open to reasonable challenges, as this approach can help prevent incidents similar to the British Post Office scandal from recurring. Anyone fill in that scandal a little bit for us?
That's a big one there, and that's a really big case. I'll leave it to Colin.
Oh gosh, thank you for that. It would be a whole new program.
Absolutely.
To say that. What I was thinking about, which plays into what you've just said or previously said, Toni, is there's a clue, or possibly a clue, if I can be a little bit judgmental on this, in terms of the 30-minute break and 1 minute over, suggests that this might be a very large organization with very hierarchical situation, and that the clocking in and clocking out is needed to keep the systems, the machinery, whatever that machinery might be. And this could be an Amazon, it could be a Walmart type machine, which it is. Mm-hmm. And the bit I think plays to what you said, Toni, is often we're good at what we do, we're suddenly promoted to being a manager without the skills and experience of it, and expected to run a team of 10. Yeah. And maybe that his previous or her previous manager was a stickler for it. And so he or she is following in their footsteps by there's no conversation about it. You were late. That's your problem, not mine, etc. And we know that that's not the recipe for success in teams.
Yeah,
so
that's my thought. Yeah, really good point there, Colin, because it's about the culture that you're used to as well, and you've brought that into that organization, and also those taught and learnt behaviors. And just for the purpose of the people that don't know about the post office scandal, there were people that were imprisoned, you know, because of a faulty system, and the system was throwing out the fact that these post office leaders were short in their calculations. So they were putting their own money in, feeding a system that was faulty, that's found to be faulty. I think it's like, how many years is it now, Colin? 30, 40 years later?
Yes, a long, long time.
Yeah, and people have been to prison, etc., etc. So there's a big injustice around that based on a system at the moment, and it doesn't look as if they're being adequately compensated. So that's
It's slow, and some people have died since then through worry and that, and some have, I believe I'm right, Tony, committed suicide as a result. Huge numbers of people not saying anything but knowing, and you know, some of the people at the top were aware of the issue and didn't say anything. It is scandalous,
Terrifying. I'm surprised I
Yes.
haven't heard of it. Spend more time on the headlines. But you know, is going back to the point we made earlier. I mean, the company you mentioned, Amazon. From what I've read, the Amazon model for sort of low-level employees is to basically work them to the point of exiting. The model is they anticipate having workers for 18 months before they're basically burned out. And going back to the point that we've raised a couple of times, you know, if I go into a company with the knowledge that they're just going to use me for what they can get and then spit me out, why would I be committed to not get away with all I could while I'm there? They're using me, I use them.
But you know, Jonathan, and that brings up another point that goes back to Tony's point, which goes back to Colin's, is we're talking about output, you know, and I think we all agree, if you're getting the job done, are you producing? Are you, you know, meeting your goals, or, you know, whatever that is, and you are performing exceptionally well or good to well, and yet you're not working the hours, you're having your friend clock you out at the regular time, but you're out of there at noon. Is that right?
Well, I think it goes, sorry.
Go ahead, Tony.
No, I was just going to say, I think it goes back to what I was talking about, that there's always going to be people that will exploit a situation. And there's always going to be managers that will micromanage. So where do you find the balance? I think that's really what it is, and it's those relationships. But then just thinking about what Colin was saying about the system to keep everything together that's in place. But it also fits in with, you know, because there are some, you know, unethical leaders, let's say, or managers that would want to use that to manage you out of a situation, you know, out of that particular role. So they know damn well that it's not working as well as it should be, and will use it as evidence to, you know, maneuver you out. So, but I would just say in here that we're all humans, we all make mistakes, but it's what we do next that counts. You know, hold your hands up and say, look, sorry, we need to relook at the system. Off you go and do your work. You know, whatever it is, you know, whatever.
Well, in many ways, we've become a very unforgiving society. You made a mistake back when you were 15 years old. We find out about it, and we're going to wave it like a flag. You know, that doesn't do much for trust either. You know, I did want to mention a point you made, Tony. Is it the Peter principle that everybody rises to their level of incompetence? That when you have people who may be very good at what they do, and therefore they get moved into supervisory or managerial positions, and that's not their skill set, it's not their experience, and then, as you've described, it can be the culture is actually encouraging poor management style, we've really got a whole system that's designed to be inefficient and ineffective, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll keep this very brief. The car was parked in a place where you needed a parking ticket to pay. We paid for it, but we paid against an old car, not this car. Fast forward, even though I've appealed many times about it, the ruling has come back against me, which is for a £3 £3 ticket, which we paid, because we made a mistake, we're having to pay 165. And one of the offerings I put up was, imagine that I've invoiced you $1,000 for something and you've paid me. And I say, hang on a minute, Jonathan, it's not been paid. But you say, I have paid it. Here's the evidence. And you go, oh, it was to the wrong account, or you put a wrong reference on it. And I say, okay, yeah, we got the money, but I'm still going to fine you 30 times more for it. And you go, you wouldn't do that. It's a genuine mistake.
Right.
It's like the computer says no,
That's
and
right.
then therefore we fall on the rule. So yeah, and I think there's some of that. And then the other bit I wanted to just mention about this, it feels like in the Amazons of this world, it's all about the transactions. And there's no relationship between the employees and the management or the organization. It's a transaction. You're a unit in the machine. That's it. And sadly, because of the state of the employment, people are desperate for jobs. So they're willing to go and work for less and poor conditions and be burnt out. But at least it's better than not having anything. And I think the organization's therefore exploiting the employees. And you can then see, because it's a transaction, not a relationship, the employees will exploit the employers where they can. I don't agree, but I'm not in that position.
Colin, I'm just curious on transactional relationships have been in organizations since time began. Do you think that we, as anybody, do you think we have gotten better? Do you think some of the bigger, smaller, any of the organizations have become more conscious, become more aware, become...
Yes, I do.
Okay.
If you finish what you're about to say.
Yeah, no, I just want to know if you think we're getting better as a whole.
Yeah.
I think we are. I think a lot of companies have taken,
Yes.
experts into their arms, like Toni, to bring into organizations and say, hey, we want to do better. I think that's true. And I think it's fabulous that we're there. But how much of those transactional relationships and companies are still playing kind of old school?
Yeah.
Right, because you've got the other side of it, which goes the flip side of what I was saying about the skill, being a good people leader and being good at business. So now let's talk about the people that are good people leaders. This situation may not even happen, but is it good for business because they don't have the business acumen? So where are they leading the people up the garden path is what I say. So ultimately, it's still about, you can have that good relationship, know how to manage people, but really still have that focus in on the business, and you can make all of it work. But I think it's in too many different, its own little cubicles, too many separations.
And there was to have a successful partnership, people really have to collaborate.
That's right.
And you have your skill set, I have mine. And if we complement each other, that's the basis for a successful partnership. As long as we're working together, if we're working independently, then we may both fail because we aren't supported in those areas where we need support. I do want to catch up with a few comments. It's nice to see this much engagement. This is from James. He says, it's become acceptable for individuals and even some companies to act unethically in their business practices, at least here in the United States. Profit is king, while using employees and acting unethically to both employees and our customers has become the norm. And Marcia says, exploitation is everywhere, Toni McLelland. Some people are always gaming.
Mm.
I'll just pick up on what you said, Carolyn. There's a lovely book called Reinventing Organizations, and there's a lot of talk in there about the different how cultures have evolved from the original sort of command and control systems to one which is much more humane or human connection. So there are those that are still operating that lowest level, but there's more
Mm-hmm.
come to the next level, the next level, the next level. They refer to it as teal, which is a very different way of working, and it's less and less hierarchical because we work less and less in that hierarchy. Look at us,
Mm-hmm.
how we're operating remotely, and how do
Right.
we manage that? So it's a good book to get.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What's the title of it again? Reinventing?
Reinvention Organizations by Frederick Lalour.
Thank you, Colin.
You know, I think related to this conversation, there's so much talk today about remote work and you know, bringing people back. On the one hand, it seems to be beneficial for a culture to be together. On the other hand, it can be very inconvenient for people who have to commute more or may need adaptability in their schedules. And then there's the issue of, we talked about this before, ensuring that people are actually doing their jobs when they're not on site. So that trust element comes in as well. And then sort of rolling back on a comment you made a little while ago, Carolyn, if I'm getting paid an hourly wage to do a certain amount of work, and I do my work in less time than that,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not given a clear um, direction on what to do now with this extra time. So now, what do I do, especially if I'm working remotely, but even if I'm not? On the one hand, I feel, well, I did the job I'm being paid to do. And on the other hand, I'm not filling the hours that I'm being paid to fill.
Mm-hmm.
What is my responsibility? Of course, I think the obvious answer that sure you would say for us, Toni, is that when, you know, if you have a culture where management and employees trust each other, there's going to be a conversation. You know, as you said, Carolyn, you know, you're going to go and say, what would you like me to do with this extra time? If there isn't that trust, I figure, well, I'm going to get away with whatever I can.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that the model is wrong then, isn't it? The business model, because it shouldn't necessarily be an hourly rate if that's going to be how you're working. It's just kind of like do your work. But then, you know, we're still in the world of job descriptions, and there's always going to be that blanket statement at the bottom that says, you know, and anything else, you know, regardless of how it's worded. So I think that there's an argument there, and we're encouraged to be, you know, working as teams and things like that. But there's always that feeling of wanting to beat a system. I remember when I was younger and I used to work in a local authority office, and the computers would go down at 6:30, you know, and me and a colleague, we worked out a way that we could boycott that. It was a really good way to get everyone out of the office, but we've managed to fix the system and stay in the office till, and we thought we were champs, but actually it was just a waste of time. You know, did it mean that my job wasn't challenging enough? I was not thinking about my well-being enough. And when I thought back to that, it's just, you know, okay, so I beat the system. Now what? Was it worth it?
Yes, I
Yeah,
students I had who spent so much time cheating. If they would have just learned the material, it would have actually been much more effective for them.
yeah, but we take that same situation about clocking or not getting your work done, and you still have 4 hours left in your day. You know, what is the right if I'm paying you an annual salary? Let's just say I'm paying you $75,000 a year in the workforce. If we were back in the building, we'd expect you to be there 40 hours a week, you know, about. So now we're working at home, and I'm paying you this amount of money, and your job is to create 5 spreadsheets a week. You're creating 5 spreadsheets a week, but you're doing it in 2 hours or 3 hours. It doesn't matter, right? Because you're doing what I would have paid you. So what were you doing in the office for 40 hours when the office was open? That's where
But then that's where you don't have a directive that says create 2 spreadsheets. I certainly wouldn't.
Well, I was using that as a silly example, yeah. But should there be the direction of, if you have completed your 5 within 30 hours, we would love you to do some extra research on something else. Or, again, Giannis, and it goes back to communication, it goes back to clarity, it goes back to what are the expectations? Because if we're not clear on them, then we'll just pretty much do whatever we want.
Yeah, do as many as you can, but there's a minimum of 2.
Right.
And that it's about the issue of honesty, and about what can I get away with? But again, isn't that an attitude, or do we all have that? I don't know. What can I get away with? There's a friend of mine who believes, when he's a contract person, he said, I believe I can do the same amount of work as somebody doing 5 days, I can do it in 4. And so rather than bulk at paying 200 a day, let's say 1,000 a week, you pay me 900 for the 4 days that I work. And again, you're putting your neck on the line, and you've got to prove that you can do that. And I believe he does. They get more value from him in the 4 days than they would if they paid him for 5 less.
I love that example.
Yeah. Because I think if I worked in that organization that we're talking about here now, I'd probably not even want a lunch break. I'd probably try to negotiate to work through and leave early than go through all of that.
Yeah, but it might be that the reason they give you a break is actually to avoid what is it? So here we got an example that my daughter and her friend, she works at a supermarket, who demand that they go for a break, even if they don't want to. You must go. All right. And that's typically a 7 or 8 hour shift in the store. My daughter, children's nurse, I think you all know, has a 12-hour shift. And sometimes she doesn't get a chance to go to the toilet. It's so busy, and they have been short-staffed. You go, hang on a minute. It's different things. What's morally right?
Right.
In this particular organization, I nearly said it, you have to have the break. There's no discussion about it, because they see it as the well-being of their employees, which is fair.
Well, and isn't it the law too, Colin?
Yeah.
Isn't the law, the labor laws, where
but why doesn't that apply to my daughter, which is public sector? Because they can get away with it.
Yeah, well, they've not leave the site. Maybe have the break and not move from where you need to clock in and out,
Yeah, they don't. Fortunately, they don't have to clock in and out. But how do you have a break when you're in the middle of recess, for example?
Yeah, no, I appreciate
Or
that.
you've got 30, unhappy children and mothers in the waiting room, and they need you. It's hard, and she's a very good person in that respect. She can't, and personally, with her not being able to go to the bathroom, that's not good for you physically.
Well, and certainly the whole idea of these long shifts, when they get towards the end, nobody can be functioning at peak efficiency after
Agreed.
11 hours. It just
Right.
isn't possible.
Yeah, people's lives.
Yeah, you put me in mind the book by Solzhenitsyn, A Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, which I read in high school. It's about a fellow in a Siberian labor camp, and I just remember being fascinated by this story where they're on a work detail, and they're not given the resources they need to do the jobs well. So they actually risk punishment to steal supplies so that they can do their jobs the way they're supposed to. And at the end of the book, he says, it's one day, and he says, it was almost a good day, because they were involved in working and they felt like they accomplished something. And that gave value to this bitter, meaningless existence that they had. And that image has always stuck with me, that when we feel like we're doing something worthwhile, pretty much
Yeah, I
everything
think that
else. Yeah, go ahead.
just listening to what you're saying there, I think that systems are good for organizations. This is the conclusion that I've come to. Systems feel good for organizations. It feels as if they're saving time, they're saving money, and they're becoming more effective and efficient. They're a damn inconvenience for anybody that's got to use that system, you know, whether you're an employee or otherwise. You know, there's a tale of, you know, just getting a passport photo. You know, I went to the official store to get it done so I could get it right. It was rejected 3 times, you know, but it was approved on the official people's system. Your eyes are closed. Give us the reason why we should accept this photo, because I went to an official place and they said, you know, so ultimately it was a damn inconvenience for me, but they think that they're doing something great. Hey, they're ticking all their boxes.
Oh, there you go.
Even though my eyes were open.
Yeah.
You painted them in, admit it.
Well, I like to say that compliance is often the enemy of ethics. Yeah. As long as we can say we're in compliance, we've done what we have to do, and now I don't have to think anymore.
Yes.
I don't have to make any evaluations. I don't have to take any responsibility because I tick those boxes. I check them. I'm in the clear. If it doesn't work, that's somebody else's problem.
Yep. Not my job. I'm just doing my job.
Yeah, I'm just doing my job, right? So I have a comment from James here, who's been very active. Thank you. There are employees who take advantage of the remote work environment. That goes without saying. But then there is the company building a relationship with the employees that will develop loyalty between the employees and their company. You know, when you have that relationship, then a lot of these problems simply take care of themselves. And you know, that really goes to, you know, it's interesting what you said, Toni, and we'll start wrapping up with this, that, you know, leadership is a skill. Management is a skill. You know, if you're micromanaging, you're not doing it right. If you are treating your employees or the people you're responsible for in a way that makes them cynical and skeptical and bitter and angry and feeling that they're not fairly dealt with, then you're really just setting yourself up for failure and setting the company up for failure. And you know, the real question is why does this still happen so much? Because it really isn't rocket science. But the hope is that having conversations like these will tilt the needle a little bit, and that's why we're here. Yeah, Colin.
My final thought on this is, I think it was Simon Sinek who talks about it. A classic is the sales manager goes into the salesman. He says, "Your numbers are down this quarter. You better get it fixed. Otherwise, we're going to have a conversation at the end of the month." Versus the sales manager goes in and says, "Hey, Bob, I noticed the numbers are down this month. Is everything okay? Or is there anything I can do?" Completely different, and breeds a different response from the people and sends a clear message to the rest of the business. It's not that we want you to fail. It's not what we're trying to get you. We're obviously trying to get the best we can from you. How can we help you get the best for us?
Great example. Yeah, great example, Colin. I love that. I love that. My final thought is just systems. We have systems. If they're broken, if they're not working, we need to fix them, period. And I think my biggest takeaway is that this is all about trust. It's about collaboration. It's about clarity. It's about communication. And are we ethically aligned, you know, as people with the organizations that we're working with?
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Toni, any last word?
I think my line is going to be around the business acumen and the leadership, people leadership part. I was working, just very briefly, I was working with an organization. Their chief executive was not a people leader, but absolutely amazing at the work he was doing. And the leadership team done nothing but complain about his lack of people leadership. And it goes back to something that Colin said earlier on, which was around, you know, maybe the previous manager, but this particular individual was not used to managing people. So why is he suddenly going to manage everyone well? And this was what my message was, that this has now become a learned behavior, you know, so, and the culture that he's been in, and that's what we need to take into consideration. So it's a bigger piece, but I would say count the smiles and the KPIs take care of themselves.
Thank you. And thank you all. Really, really delightful and thought-provoking conversation as expected. There is an option for paid memberships on my Substack to have access to a backstage conversation, which will take place shortly for those of you who have tuned in and commented. Really appreciate your engagement there. If you have a topic that you would like us to take up, please go to my website, ethicsninja.com, use the contact information, submit your idea if it's compelling. We will definitely use it for a future episode. And until then, we encourage you to continue grappling with the gray.